Welcome to season 2 of the Happy Sensory Corner podcast. At Mendability, we want to help everyone, especially when they feel vulnerable, to feel happier, more comfortable in their own skin, more confident, more proud of themselves, so they can be their true selves and we can all journey together through life more happily. Our contribution is to work on brain health. As our brains grow stronger and healthier, all of us benefit, but especially those among us who struggle to sleep, who are overwhelmed by the barrage of information from the environment, or who struggle with their bodies or with abstractions. And so we developed gentle, family centered, whole brain games that boost brain development, activate the brain's self-healing mechanisms. It's based on the neuroscience of environmental enrichment, and we call it sensory enrichment. And so we're experts in boosting brain development, but there's so much more that parents have to navigate. For example, we're not experts in parenting. And so today I'm really excited to be speaking with Elaine Taylor-Klaus is a master certified coach, co-founder of ImpactParents, which is an organization that helps parents navigate the complexities of raising children with ADHD and other neurodiverse conditions, and even neurotypical kids. And with over 15 years of experience, Elaine developed a coach approach to parenting that equips parents with practical strategies to foster independence in their children. And I really look forward to discussing that a little bit more today. Elaine, I was looking at some of your work earlier and I saw that you developed a framework that you called P.I.N.C.H. And I love the name of it. It's very, I can taste it, I can feel it, and that really caught my attention. And so we're going to be talking about that today.
Awesome.
And so, yes, I'd like to jump into first your journey, why you started all this. Is there an experience in your early childhood that kind of led you and drove you to where you're at today?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited about a gentle and generous conversation. Your energy is lovely, and I'm excited to be here with you. I don't think I would have known, except for in hindsight, that my childhood challenges led me to what I'm doing, because I thought I was doing it for my kids. But in hindsight, I look back and I realize that I was an undiagnosed child in the 70s when girls didn't have ADHD, supposedly, and when, good girls were supposed to please other people and do what they were told. And so I struggled in my early years, but didn't really realize it. And because I was a good student and I was a good kid, and so I didn't really realize how much trouble I was having until at some point I remember in about eighth grade, I went to my mom and I said, I think I'm going crazy. And and she responded much like you just did, like, wait, what? You're a good kid, you're doing great, you're getting great grades. But I had social anxiety. I didn't realize what I was struggling with. It was hard. Everything was hard. And I had to work so hard. And so, long story short, she took me to a psychologist. I sat across a big wooden desk from this, middle-aged man who talked to me for an hour and then told her I was fine and sent me on my way. And it was, 40 years later, 30 years later, I guess, something like that, when I was then a mom with three small kids under the age of 10, all of them diagnosed one by one, like dominoes, with a wide range of neurodiverse challenges from ADHD, anxiety, dyslexia, dysgraphia, like all kinds of, I had a long list. And and they were all in, vision therapy and occupational therapy and speech therapy. And, I was doing everything I
Mm,
could to try to support my kids, and I was feeling very lost in the process. And at some point, I decided I was going to go get a PhD. And so I had to take the GREs. So I had to go back to school to figure out how to do that. And I thought, well, all these kids are diagnosed. Maybe my husband's not responsible for all of this neurology. And so I went and had myself a full psychoed evaluation done on myself in my very early 40s. And lo and behold, I was diagnosed with both learning and attention issues. And all of a sudden, my life made
Was
sense.
that before or after the PhD?
I never ended up going back for the PhD because
Oh, okay.
I was trying to, I couldn't find a program that met my schedule with three small kids. So I was going
Hmm.
to do a coaching training as a stopgap measure. It was going to be temporary until I could find a program. And so
You
with,
gotta love those temporary
right?
projects.
So I
I'm
have this new
25 years into
diagnosis.
my temporary project.
Right. I went my first afternoon, I called my husband from the break in tears and I said, I found it. This is it. Because in coaching, I found a modality that was really everything I stood for as a parent. It was
Mm,
positive, it was empowering, it was not looking at my kids as broken, but looking at them as whole and capable and resourceful. When I was having children, I had used a midwife, not a doctor. Like I'm about wellness. And so I found something that allowed me to parent from a place of wellness and from a place of inspiration and to pull me out of this place of desperation that I had found myself in. And so in hindsight, that's why I say I don't think I knew that 12-year-old girl had such an influence, but I was doing a coaching exercise with a colleague a number of years later. And when she was working with me to kind of get my why and, help me understand why I was doing what was important, what was at stake, what I realized is that I wanted to support other parents, not just so that they could be the parent they want to be to these amazing, complex kids who have such capacity, if only we could bring it out in them.
mm,
But it was also about, I didn't want other kids to be raised the way I was raised, or other kids to be raised the way my husband was raised, with this denial and just try harder and if only and why can't you just that that framework. And our parents didn't know any better. I'm not judging them for it. I just feel like when we know better, we can do better,
yeah.
and we do know better. And so I realized I was in a position to help parents learn what I had learned and parent from a very, very different place. And it's been the most life-changing, empowering thing I ever could have done in my life. Truly.
Uh, 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 I, I've got like three different follow-up questions. I would go down three different rabbit holes, but I'd like to just explore one. Let me think for a second. One of the rabbit holes is, when we try to help children who have additional needs, I'm going to say that, or complex kids, right? So your
Mhm.
your unexpected kid. Um, what you learn there, I wanted to talk about your evolution from focusing on kids with ADHD to you then other neurological conditions and then now neurotypical kids because and we're seeing it with our work with special ed what works in a special ed classroom to help kids regulate, to help kids be happy and have a
Works
good
for
time and
everybody.
concentrate and learn can be used in a gen ed classroom. And so I think this is what you saw as well. And so I'm thinking, oh, what do complex kids have in common with every kid? What is the need that
Mm.
they have that all of the kids have that sort of that you've discovered because you were focusing on ADHD? And I think that'll be a fascinating conversation. You know what? Now that I've said it, our audience probably is thinking the same thing, or maybe not.
I
You
have
know
a
what?
really simple answer to that,
Okay.
actually. So we can go to some of the others because it really is as simple as everyone wants to be seen and
Yeah.
everyone wants to be heard
Right.
and everybody wants to be recognized and acknowledged for who and what their capacity is. That's it. And whether you're talking about a
Yes,
neurotypical kid or a
but
neurodiverse kid,
you
how
know
we do
that as a mom, you know your children have these emotional needs. They want to feel nurtured. They want to feel loved unconditionally. They don't want to feel like they will only be loved if they
yes.
perform, if they get the good grade, if. So then you start praising for effort rather than results, those kinds of things. But what did you learn from the world of complex kids that made you see, that made you, see your children better that we could learn from with our neurotypical kids? What is a need that was discovered from the world in ADHD that translates to the neurotypical world?
So I think what I'm saying goes beyond a child's need to feel loved unconditionally. I think
Okay.
when I talk about being seen, in the coaching realm, we talk about meet people where they are. And with complex kids, they they're kind of hiding in their own heads in a lot of ways because
Yes.
they can't get themselves to do what the world thinks they're supposed to do, or the expectations that are set for them, or maybe they're developmentally not quite ready for the expectations set for them. And so they get a lot of feedback for what they aren't doing or what they're doing wrong. And the whole foundation of a strength-based approach is to help them see what they're doing well, to catch them being good. And so when I talk about kids want to be seen, everybody wants to be acknowledged for what they are bringing, what they can do, for what they're contributing, for what their capacity is. And whether it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a neurotypical kid or a neurodiverse kid. Neurotypical kids get a lot more positive feedback and affirmation and acknowledgement for what they're doing right or well or positively. And neurodiverse kids get a lot of negative feedback for what they aren't doing. And yes, to your point, there's a performance piece. It's what they're doing instead of what they're being. And that's a whole other conversation that we could go down. But at the end of the day, I think when we acknowledge, when we recognize and see people for what they are being and doing, and find the strength in it, and whether that is finding a kid who's really empathetic to animals or empathetic to their friends, even though they missed doing their homework because they were staying up being kind to a friend. If we can acknowledge what they are bringing positively and also what they're struggling with. I can see that it's really hard for you when you try to. I can tell that you're
Mhm.
really working hard, and it must feel really frustrating that you're not achieving what you feel like you could be able to. Acknowledgement, I believe, is a fundamental human need. And I think a lot of people don't get it.
And do you think it's because complex kids make us work harder at being intentional as parents that
Mm,
we become better parents? And is this the difference that complex kids bring to the world?
that's a
It
great
teach us
question.
how what it takes to be a more intentional parent?
I think that's part of it. So what's coming to me is like when you can understand what your kids are going through, you can approach them from a place of compassion. You let go of judgment and you let go of expectation, or you shift expectation. And I'm not talking about lowering the bar, I'm talking about moving it to meet them where they are, right? And so I think that for complex kids, the language that I often use with parents is to make a distinction between wanting from our kids and wanting for our kids. And parents have a tendency to go through the world wanting from our kids. We expect performance from them. We want them to mature and to take on more responsibilities and to perform well in school. And that's fine. I'm not judging that at all. And when you have a complex kid, they really thrive and flourish when we can begin to want more for them than we want from them. Because when we want for them, we invite them to begin to want for themselves. And their self agency and ownership is essential to their learning to manage themselves, because it's more complicated for them to learn to manage themselves than it is for the typical kid. So that's, I think, the shift. It's how we see their behavior and performance in terms of what's in it for them instead of what do we expect them to do to make us look good, to check the boxes, to whatever.
Um, you've dropped a couple of bombshells, and I want to explore them. One of them had to do with one of the rabbit holes that I had in mind.
Okay.
Um, but I think they all have to do with shifting focus on kids when it comes to helping kids. Shifting the focus away from the kids to the parents. At what point did you discover that coaching the parent had a bigger impact on the wellness of the kids than coaching the kids?
That's a great question. Two things jump out at me. One was when I started getting coaching, because I was my wit's end. I was lost and I didn't know what to do to help my kids. And I was doing everything the textbooks were telling me and the experts were telling me, and it wasn't working. And it was making me feel worse, like a terrible parent. And I remember being in a lecture hall, a woman named Wendy Mogul, who was a great author, wrote The Blessings of a Skinned Knee. It was my favorite childhood parenting book. And she was speaking at my kid's school, and I was sitting in the middle of the auditorium on a rainy night, and she was talking about accountability. And I raised my hand tentatively, and I was like, well, what if your kid has special needs? And she looked at me dead on, Kim, and she said, well, then this doesn't apply to you. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? And she's like, you're going to have to deal with it differently. And it was this moment, it was the first time I ever got permission to stop trying to do what everybody else was telling me to do and start trusting my instincts and start trying to figure out what I needed to do for my kids based on who I knew they were and not who everybody else was and what everybody else was telling me. So that was the start. And then as I learned about coaching, and it was so impactful for me, then I started going into coaching training. That's when everything shifted. And like our line at Impact Parents is the change you want for them starts with you. Because when I started focusing on parents, on myself, everything changed for my family. And eventually my husband actually became a coach as well. And when I asked him a few years later, what changed? What happened? He said, I just couldn't deny anymore that what you were doing was working. And what I was
This is
doing was
so
focusing
funny.
on me, not them.
Sorry, I here's another rabbit hole. I'm going to
Yeah.
ignore that one. Um,
That's okay. Wait, so one more thing. So the only other thing that happened after that was this, as I got into this, when I first started coaching, I was working with teenagers. And I realized that yes, I could help this teenager figure out how to take a spend the night party and apply it to doing her homework. But that's not where the juice was. The cascading impact was with the parent. Because if I could help a parent change a family dynamic like I had done, and then that impacted my husband and all the people he's impacted, it's the pebble effect. That's what I really wanted. My goal, my vision is to be what my husband calls an impact billionaire. It's not about making $1 billion, it's about impacting a million souls. And I can have a whole lot more impact and make a much greater difference in the world by working with, supporting, and coaching parents than I can by working with one student at a time. So that's for
um,
parents because we
love
make a
it.
huge difference and we don't give
And
ourselves credit for that.
yes, yes, yes. We were talking to I think our last episode was with a coach, an eating coach, focusing on it was just yesterday, intuitive eating.
Eating, yeah.
And and I thought we were going to have a great episode on how to help kids have a good relationship with their food, kind of be more aware of what it feels like to eat certain things versus other things, and kind of let them listen to their own body and then intuitively make decisions about what they feel like eating one day or the next day. But it was not at all the episode. The episode was all about how to help the parents
Yeah.
have a healthy relationship with their own bodies so that they know what they feel like eating one day over to the next. And this then becomes a natural because as a parent, you want to teach your kids to have the same experience as you're having, and so you're going to show them by example.
Naturally.
So this idea of shifting the focus to the parents, this is a common thread with a lot of the experts that we're talking to over the last couple of years, and it's really cool. So, but you're
It's
taking it to
almost a
the next level.
counterintuitive truth, right? Because parents think that if they've got a minute to spend, a dollar to spend, any energy, it should all go on their kids because your
Yeah,
kids are challenging and they're challenged. And so we need to help the kids. And so it
yeah.
seems counterintuitive. But the truth is that if we take a fraction of that and focus on ourselves, it compounds our capacity to actually support them. But it's hard for parents to see that because that's a whole other episode about guilt and shame. So,
And this is the other rabbit hole that I was thinking about. Maybe let's talk about why you need a coach as a parent.
yeah.
Maybe some things that you had not considered. And maybe if we have 5 minutes at the end, you can have a nice sort of soundbite for it and say, hey, think about this. Maybe you need a coach. Um, but I wanted to talk about how you've taken it to the next level. And you're talking about turning parents not into parents, but into coaches. Is this a good way of describing what you do?
I, what I like to say is that we teach parents to take a coach-like approach. I don't want parents to stop being parents, and I don't want them to become their kids' coaches. But when parents
Yes.
learn to take a coach-like approach, because your kids need you as a parent, not a coach. But when you learn to take a coach-like approach and you foster that trust and relationship, you can get to a point where either you're helping your kid be ready to accept the help of a coach if that's appropriate for them, or you can support them in the way they need. My kids are now at a point where I can say, "What do you need from me right now? You need me to be a mom, you need me to be a coach, you need a hug, what do you need?" And they can say, "Can you coach me through this?" Or, "No, I just need you to be a mom right now." But it took a lot of years to get there. I'm not saying everybody should start there. My point is that I don't want parents to start, like one of the first things we learn in coaching school is you don't coach anybody without permission. So I'm not talking about coaching our kids, but I am saying that when we learn to take a more coach-like approach, when we learn, which is an empowerment-based modality, when we learn to ask more questions and to acknowledge what we see in other people and to bring a different kind of compassion and to meet them where they are, some foundational principles of coaching, which are just good relationship techniques and tools and communication tools. When we learn to meet them that way, we can empower them to become who they want to be and stop trying to get them to fulfill whatever it is we thought they were supposed to do or be. Because at the end of the day, this is their journey. And our journey as parents is to be with them and support them and guide them on their journey. And that means we have to pull ourselves out of it so that we can let them be on their journey. And the
Yeah,
coach approach is just a really powerful way to do that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it starts with the parents. If we want our kids to be happy, independent adults, then we have to let them,
And we have to
right?
help them
Let them
practice. We have to give
practice
them an
the skill.
opportunity to practice, right? We want to bring
Exactly.
them through the process of problem solving again and again and again collaboratively.
And do
So,
that in a safe place where they can screw up with cushions around them, you
yeah.
know?
So,
Because when they're outside, the cushions are not going to be there. I have
so
one kid who only learns the hard way. It's
oh,
been
I
so
have one too.
frustrating to be a parent.
It's
And
exhausting.
it's until we say he's only going to learn the hard way, it's that I could allow myself, I can't stop trying because the whatever coaching method I was using was not working. And so we switched to giving them lots of opportunities. So for example, he wanted to do stuff with cars. So we bought him a junk car to fix and he fixed it wrong many times. Those there's a frame for mechanics with a broken bolt. And it says every 10-minute project is a bolt away from a 2-day project.
Right.
And anyway, so yes,
Well, so my
if we
example
want
for
them,
this that
yes.
that came to me as you were saying that, I just had this conversation this week. I have three kids. My middle kid is 27 and is in medical school. And we were having this conversation the other day about I was saying something about I can't wait to see what she chooses, where she goes. And she says, "Well, what do you think I should do?" I said, I'm not ready to tell you that yet because you're on your path and I don't want to influence it. I do have a pretty good idea of where I think she may end up or what some of the options are. And at some point I'll share it for her, share it with her when she wants it. But if I give it to her now, it's going to influence her in a way that she doesn't need me to be part of that yet. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be there to support her and guide her and offer advice if she wants it. But I want to make sure that she's got her sense about herself first, because otherwise it's really easy for kids to take what their parents' expectations are and to just choose them and use them because that's a lot less effort than figuring out your own, right?
Right. Now, let me throw a curveball at you. What what if your child is cognitively impaired?
That's a
And
different conversation.
so, picturing themselves in the future is not, they don't even know who they are. They don't have a very poor self-awareness.
Yeah.
How do you foster independence? Because they're a few steps away from being able to be coached to have experiences and try out some things. Do you have
So,
some techniques there?
yeah, I think that the answer to that is incrementally. So if you're meeting them where they are and where they are is developmentally is not yet ready for that cognitive independence, then we have a pyramid we teach for fostering independence, and you start with the relationship and you build the trust and you build the communication so that when you've got strong relationship, trust, and communication, then you can begin to step into little areas of fostering agency, getting buy-in, ownership, all of the pieces to lead them to agency. And one of the things in our model is to take aim very specifically. We do a lot of work with parents on taking aim because parents have a tendency to take aim on topics that are too big. You can't take aim on mornings. There are 20 million steps in the morning, but you can take aim on setting an alarm or getting out of bed when the alarm goes off or brushing your teeth before going to the breakfast room. So the more specific you take aim, the more success you're going to get, and success breeds success. So if you're dealing with a kid who needs more scaffolding, which is absolutely developmentally appropriate, then our job is to help. We want them always to be working on one next level of independence, whatever is developmentally appropriate for them.
Is that
And
what you mean by lowering the bar?
that's what I mean by shifting expectations. I'm not lowering the bar because lowering the bar suggests that I don't believe they can ever do this.
Hmm.
What I'm saying is set the bar for the next level, step up for what's appropriate for them now. Because we have this tendency to stand at the top of the stairs for a kid at a wheelchair on the bottom and say, "Come on up the stairs." Well, that's not realistic and not a fair expectation. But if we say, okay, you're at the bottom of the stairs and you want to get up, let's strategize all the different ways you might do that. Is it building arm strength? Is it creating a pulley system? Is it like whatever it is, how do I work with you to get to the next step? Let me come down the stairs and let's work with helping you get from this step to that step. And then we're going to work on the next step. And so by the time you're done, you've gotten the kid all the way up the stairs, but it's not nearly as daunting and overwhelming as it is when you just take it one step at a time. And that could
Is
apply to a
it
million different things.
is this where you use the pinch framework? Is this how you get to the next step?
Pinch is one framework that helps you get to the next step. Well
I
done.
love pinch. You got to talk about pinch.
That's good. Pinch is a framework for motivation, for helping people find their motivation. So it's an acronym. Let me step back. Kids with neurodivergence very typically have a challenge getting the dopamine that their brains need to get activated. You use the term activating the brain. We use the term activating the brain. So whether you're using meditation, medication, sleep, exercise, I don't care what you use to activate the brain, we all need to activate our brains. And some of us need more help than others to get our brains active.
Hmm.
And when you have neurodiversity, you typically need more help. And so motivation isn't as simple as just get it done. Some people are motivated by putting something on a list and then just getting it done. God bless them, they can do that. Some of us, others of us, need to find a motivation to do almost anything. And that's fine. We just have to recognize that we have to begin to learn and understand what our motivators are so that we can get ourselves activated. So P.I.N.C.H stands for the 5 key motivators that we've figured out over the years, working with other experts and our own experience with parents, really are key for people with neurodiversity, for complex kids to find their motivation. Okay, so that's the context for it.
Before you
P.I.N.C.H,
go into that, have
yeah,
you seen that pinch applies to neurotypical people as well?
there's, but neurotypical have more motivators to draw on than we do.
But why, if pinch works so well, then why not just do pinch for everything?
You can do P.I.N.C.H for everything, but my business partner can put something on a list and be motivated by putting it on a list.
And it's not one of the pinches?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
No, 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 no. That's a get it done button.
And you've never seen a neurodiverse person be motivated by checking off a box?
Sometimes, but it might be more competitive. They're like, you got to look at what's underlying it. Is it
Mm.
really, I want to do it because it's the right thing to do and I should do it? Or is it more, I'm gonna put it on the list so I can check it off so I can say I checked off all my things, right? Like,
Uh, yeah,
and
so it feels to me like all of the other motivators can be traced back to one of the pinches.
maybe it's possible. I have not, honestly, I haven't looked at it that deeply, if I'm honest.
That's a
But
PhD thesis in the making, don't you think?
yeah,
No, seriously, if you can find a way to
any
get people
motivator that
motivated,
doesn't, yeah,
you can get people, doing all the things that they know are good for them, but they haven't found the motivation to do it.
that's very true.
And if you can crack that nut, there's a lot of lives that can be saved.
I think
Like
that's true.
literally, when you look at health things, for example, you get people who know they should stop doing this thing that's ruining their health. But if they could pinch themselves into, we're gonna have to talk about what the pinch means, into wanting to care for this
Yes,
body that's going to carry them through all of the beautiful things in life they did still have to explore, then they'll want to have a fulfill. They'll have such a more
fulfilling
fulfilling life. Is
life.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
and
the key to
so
what you're saying, though, Kim, is want, is
yes, want.
we our job as parents and caretakers and caregivers and whatever is to empower other people, is to help them figure out what they want and what they want in it. So instead of wanting our kids to do it because we told them to or because it's the right thing to do, if we can help them figure out what's important about it to them, then they're going to have a different kind of ownership of it than if they're just doing it. I mean, there was lots of times I did things growing up because I was afraid of the consequences, because I was afraid I was going to get in trouble.
And it's
Uh,
not one of the pinch.
well, it can be, but and we're going to get to that. So
I know
let me
we're
go
building this up so well. This is going to be
Okay.
beautiful.
That's the H, but and I'll explain it when we get there.
Okay.
Um, all right, so can I go through the
Go
acronym?
for it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do pinch.
So P
Yes.
stands for play. In that realm is also creativity and humor. I took a little license with the acronym so that we could get it all in.
So you
Okay.
can get a beautiful pinch.
So P is for play, creativity, and humor.
Hmm.
These are kids who might be motivated, who you can get them to put their laundry in the hamper if you put a basketball hoop over the hamper.
And my
Uh,
kid who learns the hard way, he's all about play.
all about the play.
Did you do the
My
flags? I saw there's this guy who goes and says, there's four flags, and you plant your flag in your country, and your flag is the fun flag, or the flag is the
love that.
boss flag. Do you know who I'm talking
I don't know
about?
about it.
Because it feels like you're in that world. And so we did the flag thing at home where I say, "What's your flag?" And this kid's flag was all 100%
All
play. And if you can
play.
make doing your laundry a play thing, he will be doing laundry all day for everybody in the family, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. It's brilliant. And so, but kids who like to write or draw or paint or act, all that comes in there. Um, my favorite play story is, which is kind of a combination between P and N. So I'll tell it when we get to N. Okay. So,
Okay, okay.
but P, a lot of kids, the class clowns or kids who are motivated by, they just need to keep
Yeah.
things light and humorous. And I think what happens is we're really good at the play when the kids are really little, and then they grow to grade school, and somehow we decide they're not supposed to play anymore. It's supposed to get
Oh, my
serious.
kid is still famous in the whole high school. He's still being mentioned by the chemistry teacher as a bad example. There were two white powders.
Oh,
And he said, whatever you do, do not taste them
well,
because
that was a
one of them is
stupid
going
thing
to
to
kill
say.
you. Guess who tasted them?
Right. What a stupid thing to say. It's like a challenge.
I know. I just, yeah. And so yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
When play has gotten a bad reputation, it's coming back in recent years. We understand that people are motivated by play. It's okay for kids to play in school. It's okay for teachers to use play to engage kids in learning. Like play is a legitimately profoundly effective way for people to find motivation and engagement
yes.
and
And
creativity,
social skills and
all of it.
negotiation and communication and yeah.
So I stands for interest. And so if you've ever heard yourself say, well, this kid won't do anything they don't want to do, or they only do well in some classes, but not in other classes, but they're so smart, they should be able to do all of them. Well, they're probably highly motivated by what's interesting to them. And that's not bad or wrong. That's
I'm a
human,
big eye guy.
right? You're a big
Yes.
eye guy. So
Yeah.
these are kids who tend to do well for certain teachers, but not others, or certain subjects for not others. And I often say about neurodiverse kids that our kids are specialists in a generalist's world. And so these kids will perform outrageously if they can dive deep into something they really are interested in, but will never seem to make it on the other things. Like I had
Do you
a
put
big negotiation with my son in 10th grade around getting through chemistry so that he could do the history and the philosophy, which he loved, right? But he wasn't going to be able to get out of high school and into college if he didn't finish the chemistry. So we had to help him figure out how to use one motivation to compensate for another.
Oh wow. It sounds like if you could put a little bit of philosophy into the chemistry. Now I'm thinking anyway. Uh
Oh, right?
my
Yeah,
do
we
you
did
do you
that.
put pers there's a technical word that they use for children who it's obsess is a bad word. That's why they
Perseverate.
found an alternative. Perseverate. Yes. Do you put perseveration, which is a weird word to use, in the interest? Is this part of is this where you if you have a kid who perseverates and oh, he's got a very strong eye and we can leverage that, or is this an anxiety thing and you're trying to stay away from anything that is an anxiety driven behavior?
I don't know how to answer that. That's a complicated question. The answer is it's going to depend on the kid and context and what's going on, because perseveration can be a challenging behavior, or it can be an additive behavior. Depends on how it's being used. But
It could be
I
a
can see
clue though,
the
right?
relationship.
If
What?
if you have a kid who perseverates on something, then you have a clue of what would grab them if you needed to.
Maybe perseveration is it tends to be more connected to us kind of being stuck, a little bit
Yes,
more anxious.
for
So,
sure, for
and
sure.
what
It's
we're
it's
talking
an
about,
there's
here is a choice, is I choose to engage in this more and more and more because I find it fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Whether I find people fascinating or the subject fascinating or the environment fascinating, whatever it is that compels me to want to engage more and more and know more and more. That's a motivation by interest. So
All right.
the N is for novelty. A lot of us are novelty seekers. I often say that people with ADHD are stimulation seekers. We're constantly seeking input. That's why there's so many sensory seekers and so much sensory issues in the ADHD space. It's a different truth for people on the autism spectrum. They tend to be overly sensory, uh, experiencing sensory overly, and they need to kind of reduce sensory input. So there's kind of a different manifestation of it. But novelty seekers are people who are seeking something new and different. These are kids who do really well at the beginning of a school year, at the beginning of a semester, new pens, new papers, new teachers, new classmates. That really can work well. And then by October or by February, they're done. They're spent. Like, because it's gotten boring. These novelty seekers are people who have a system that works great and then they get tired of using it. And even though it worked great, they get bored with it. They get tired of using it. So I'm a major novelty seeker. I have 3 toothbrushes and 3 toothpastes in my bathroom drawer. So that every day it's a new experience of which toothpaste am I going to use and which toothbrush. Actually, I've narrowed it down to 2 because now I use the 2-minute toothbrushes. Um, but it keeps it interesting so that I brush my teeth twice a day or 3 times a day every day, which I know that sounds like I'm a grown adult. I should know better and I should just do it because I should do it. But the
But why use any
novelty
brain
helps me.
power in something as mundane as brushing your teeth? You should have figured a system so you just use your energy for something more important. It's the, I know what you're saying. Um, but it feels, it's a bit like, are you familiar with Getting Things Done by David Allen?
No,
And he talks about offloading all of your thoughts that you don't want to have more than once onto a piece of paper and process them as quickly as possible because you don't want your brain to be doing anything you don't want to be doing more than once because it's not worth doing. And brushing your teeth is not
that's
something.
that's very practical. That's a very just get it done kind of approach. And that's
Yeah.
work for neurotypical people sometimes, but that is not always going to work for a neurodivergent. Just not. I get that I should just take the emotion out of and the energy out of brushing my teeth, but it helps me do it twice a day and keep it fun with a novelty. So,
I love it. I'm thinking about trying this out actually.
so that's just an example of novelty. There are a million things. So I was saying that my kids used P.I.N.C.H. I needed to get them to go to the grocery store during a difficult family time after a loss of a family member. And they didn't want to, and I don't blame them for not wanting to. My eldest was 16 at the time. And I was like, can you please go take care of this? And they looked at me and they looked at their siblings and they looked back at me and then they looked at their siblings and they said, okay, everybody's superheroes to the grocery store. And they donned capes and shorts over their tights and they literally dressed up as superheroes to get themselves to go to the grocery store. Now, did they have to? Could they have just gone? Of course, but they
No,
used
they could have
play,
just gone. They weren't
but
going to just go.
they weren't. So they used play and novelty
Yeah.
to help themselves get it done.
Perfect. Love it.
Um, I know we need to watch our time, so let me keep going with P.I.N.C.H. The C stands for uh, competition, also collaboration, also connection. So sometimes we're competing with ourselves, sometimes we're competing with others, but the C is about connecting into some relationship with other or relationship with self to get it done. Right. Teachers use this in the classroom a lot. Sometimes I think they overuse it in the classroom because it can create anxiety for some people. So the C doesn't always work for everybody. I have one of my kids who has significant anxiety, can be really competitive, but
But he has to win.
has to be careful about it and really loves collaboration. Can't do anything without a studying group, you know. So has to have like we'll get to the gym if there's a buddy to go work out with. Like really, really relies on the collaboration. I actually watched them recently in a text exchange with their grandmother figure out how to get themselves to exercise because they were trying to help their grandmother exercise, right? So that connection with other can be really powerful. And then the H is stands for hurry up. And that is urgency. That is actually relying. The four things we just talked about are using the frontal lobe of the brain to get stuff done, our executive function.
Even the play. I'm seeing a lot of
Even play, well,
amygdala.
play absolutely is happening it's a conscious part of our brain. Hurry up is happening in the primitive part of our brain. It's the
Right. Yes,
amygdala where
definitely.
you're
Yes.
waiting for cortisol or hormones to kick in to make it urgent that I gotta wait till these are the kids who wait till the last minute to do anything, to get it done, to start the paper. Um, to start the 3 month project, the night before, because they're waiting for an urgent symptom from their brain, signal from their brain that it's time to get it done. I used to be known for waiting for the last 20 minutes, so I knew I had exactly 20 minutes to get up and get out of the house and get to school on time. And I couldn't get up until I was already almost late. The thing about urgency is that parents have a tendency to demonize urgency. I want to take a stand for urgency. It's not that it's a bad strategy. It's just that we don't want it to be our only one. And very often, adults who haven't learned to understand their motivations and manage these things, urgency has become the only way they know to get themselves to do things. And that puts you in a constant stress cycle. So you don't want to be constantly relying on cortisol to get everything done. You want to find some other motivators. But sometimes waiting for the last 20 minutes and walking out the door right at the right time is not a terrible thing. Or even sometimes writing the paper a little late isn't, I mean, my kid used to write some beautiful papers, even though he didn't start till the night before. It's not always because he was thinking about it for weeks before.
Yeah.
So it's not always a bad thing. We have to be careful not to demonize it, but to invite kids to find other motivations so that they can learn to have a more well-rounded motivation diet, if you will. We talk about play diets. Let's talk about motivation diets, right? Having a
I knew I
range
was
of
going to
things.
love Pinch, but I've totally fallen in love with Pinch. And
It's
so is
great,
this
isn't it?
where a coach comes in and helps you identify which one of the pinches is the best one for you?
It could be. I mean, I think we teach parents to use pinch with their kids all the time, like to help your kid identify what was it that helped motivate you to do that. Because you want your kid to be able to say, Mom, I really wanted to be able to go hang out with my friends, or I wanted to, like, they need to understand how to get themselves to do things. So we start by looking at what works, and the solutions are in the successes. Then we can map it over to other
So
things.
where do I go to learn more about Pinch? Do you have a book? Do you have a class?
There's
Or
there's It's great. There's an article on the website on Pinch. I'll give you a link to put in your show notes. There's definitely a section, probably a chapter or a subsection in the book. Um, and I will also say, Kim, it's as simple as what I just described to you. There are 5 motivators. We need to help people identify their
so
motivators and
somebody
begin
like me
to
who
play with
feels
it.
this urge to dive deeply into Pinch in order to integrate it, am I a it feels like I'm an I. Is this an I thing, or
That could
isn't it?
be. You're finding it
Right?
fascinating.
I'm
Yeah.
finding it fascinating, and so I want to go into it, and that's so I love leaving this podcast on a cliffhanger, on a
Lovely.
pinch cliffhanger. Pinch yourselves on the cliff that they're. I love it. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
My
I
pleasure.
know I had a lot of fun
You
learning
too.
about this, and I can't wait for our parents listening, learning more about a pinch and about you, maybe coaching them to become coach-like in their approach with their kids, and learning what it's like so that they're this newfound calm and
Yes.
confidence and independence in yourself as a parent can not by osmosis, but just be transferred, right?
That's what I'm going for is calm and competent parents become inspiring parents. and start parenting from inspiration, not desperation.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you
Thank you,
for
everybody.
bringing this forward,
Have
and I hope if anybody wants help or support, let me know. I'm happy to help.
I have a sense that yes, yes, yes. I will put everything in the show notes, and I'll send an email to everybody about this episode, and they'll find links to talk to you and learn more about Pinch and coaching with you guys. Everybody have a blessed week.
Take care, everyone.